Doing with this?
Trust me, I don't know. She thought you were left-handed.
Just teasing. Just teasing. All right. I know, it's like, It's 7:02. And we're calling this business meeting of the Orange County Board of Education to order. I will now read the public charge. The Orange County Board of Education pledges to its citizens to conduct its business in a courteous and productive manner, showing respect for fellow board members, staff, and citizens. The board asks its citizens to conduct themselves with the same courtesy toward both school personnel and each other. As per board policy, Robert's Rules of Order will be used to conduct meetings. A moment of silence will be observed before each meeting. The board asks that you check your cell phones and other electronic devices to be certain that they are either turned off or on vibrate to avoid interruption of the meeting. We will now observe a moment of silence. Let me take this outside. Thank you very much. Ms. Dr. Wirt, do we have any recognitions?
Yes, ma'am, we do. Mr. Stevens?
Good evening, Mr. Superintendent, members of the board and the community. Tonight we have a few recognitions for you. The first is to highlight some students from Gravelly Hill. Let me say from time to time, folks in the audience who may not be aware, different works of art, and I do say works of art, are featured by our students here in the boardroom. A couple of months ago, the Gravelly Hill artwork was in here. It garnered state level recognition. I can assure you that many of the pieces catch the eye of folks who come in this room or may see it on the video, including the special pieces on the superintendent's desk. If you hadn't had a chance to see it, I would look at it. It's outstanding. But I'd like to bring up Miss Victoria Buckner, arts teacher at Gravelly Hill Middle School. She has brought with her families and students who received recognition at the state fair this year for their great artwork. Ms. Buckner, I'll give it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Stevens. Thank you all for inviting us to this special event. I'm so thrilled to recognize my students. Let me get control of myself. I'm a little nervous. So every school can enter up to 6 works of art as a school, and I selected pieces that our students did as they were 7th graders. They were collages, and I put them together as individual pieces that were quality works and 6 that worked really well together. And we came in 3rd place, and I was so thrilled. I got a phone call on one of those days when we had a snow day, and I thought it was a prank at first, and but I was very thrilled to find out it wasn't. So I would like to recognize my students if they would come up here. Megan Mance, Kessner Kelly, Mr. Dalton McAdams, Ms. Grace Young, Ms. Savannah Barrett, Mr. Kyle Catlett. And they did this artwork when they were 7th graders, and now they are truly talented 8th graders too. And I'm very proud of them, and I'm also very proud of their parents for doing such an awesome job of raising such wonderful children to send to our school. So thank you. Thank you very much. Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Good job.
Thanks so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you. trying not to be nervous, I tried to get them out.
I'm talking in front of my students.
Adults, thank you.
And especially when you're being people
I know that. Hi, Mom.
I'm sure she's watching.
Well, she will later.
She will. She can watch it again.
Thank you for inviting us.
That's funny. Hi, Mom. All right.
Our next recognition, when I heard about this, I thought about a t-shirt that I've seen for years. It's sort of, I guess maybe it's like a dad joke t-shirt, perhaps. It says, the older I get, the better I was. But the reason I think about it, not because this actually applies to this individual, is because it's actually true. Because when you have done such an amazing job and a great job, you do get honored for the work you have done and you continue to do. I'd like to invite our district athletic director in here, Mr. Bob Hill. I am so sorry, I said that incorrectly. I'd like to invite in North Carolina High School Athletic Director, Hall of Fame member,
Whoa.
Bob Hill, who's recently inducted. As many of you know, Mr. Hill hasn't been a long-standing figure in this district, but certainly cast a long shadow over the history of sports in this state. He has already done great things for us here in this district, including what he will introduce as our last two recognitions tonight, with some of our high school athletic directors getting a national level certification. But he serves on many boards, as you've seen before. He's come to the board meeting, and he has been recognized by his colleagues. And to that testament, he has been recently inducted to the Hall of Fame. So I'll allow you, please, for any words you have. And notice the ring.
Oh,
Beautiful ring.
Oh.
He's got.
That is a Hall of Fame ring. Ladies and gentlemen.
Well, you gotta show it to us.
It's so nice.
Hold it to the camera.
Oh. That's nice.
Hall of Famer Hill.
Hall of Famer Hill.
It's always a pleasure to come before the board, Madam Chair, board members, Dr. Work. It was an honor. It was an honor for my family. It was an honor for all the people that I work with, and especially it was an honor for the young kids that I work with, and over the years across two districts, and I got a lot of love from them on Facebook, and it's just amazing, you know, to do a job that I would do for free, you know, to be able to get paid
Don't say
to,
Add that to the budget.
Yeah. I know. That's a good way to balance things.
to get paid for it. And be able to take care of my family doing something that I truly love to do. And I thank you guys for honoring me and recognizing me, but I do give it to the people that I work for. I consider myself a servant leader. And I thank you again for that. And can I introduce you?
Yes, please do.
All right. Well, without it's kind of, I'm really excited for these guys. We have a process in the National Interscholastic Athletic Administrators Association. The acronym is NIAAA, and it is a National Athletic Administrators Association for administrators all over the country. And about maybe 15, 20 years ago, they decided to get some type of certification for the athletic administrators. So they put their heads together and they came up with trying to get a educational agency to try to endorse or credit the program. It's called the Leadership Training Institute. And they were able to get the advanced ed. Some of you may be familiar with that. This certification is accredited through Advanced Ed Agency. The certification that our ADs have now is equivalent to a national board certification. They have taken 5 classes. Well, actually, one took 5 because he got up under the deadline, and the other one took 6 4-hour classes. And over a period of 2 years, and then had to sit and take an exam of 100 questions for 2 hours. And I am proud to say that Andy Simmons and Mike McCauley are national certified athletic administrators. And that is a feather in Orange County's cap, that is a feather in Orange High School and Cedar Ridge's cap. These young men have done a tremendous job with their learning. I'm looking for big things for Cedar Ridge and big things from Orange as they have a national athletic administrator certification. And in front of everybody, guys, congratulations on the job well done. I present to you Andy Simmons, Mike McCauley, national athletic administrators from Orange County.
You gotta come through too, because we gotta see the ring.
Thank you so much. Congratulations. Congratulations. Thank you so much. How you walking like this? Congratulations. We're proud of you. Look at there. He kept talking like this. Look at that big ring. That's it. All right, so before we move on to the next item, I'll say that you're free to keep your seats or and stay here till 10 o'clock with us, or you can go home and watch us on TV. Or some basketball. Or some basketball. Whatever you feel like. Yeah. Good night. Thank y'all for coming out this way. Good night. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night. Thank y'all for coming out.
Good night.
Good night. Sure, thank y'all. All right, now it is time for the agenda adoption.
I have good kids.
Second. Yes, because I was kind of, could we like to amend the agenda?
Yeah, I would love to request that we add an item at the end to discuss the May 1st teacher walkout and just the implications of that.
All right, so that motion is for the amended agenda.
Not agenda, yes. Second.
All in favor? Opposed? All right, so that, the agenda has been adopted. Thank you. So now we have a couple of people that signed up for public comment, and so now read this. The Board of Education, as an elected representative body of the school district, wishes to provide a forum for citizens to address the board with public comments. To provide an opportunity for input while conducting an orderly meeting, individuals or groups may be heard by the board in accordance with the policy. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes per meeting. When the 3 minutes end, the speaker must stop speaking immediately. Yielding time to another speaker will not be permitted. The board will not have a discussion with any speaker. Matters involving specific employees are protected under the state law, and matters relating to specific students are protected under both state and federal law. Public comments should not address any specific confidential student or personnel matter. Complaints concerning any specific employee or student are not permissible under public comments. If you wish to address a matter that may require identifying either a student or an employee, please first direct your inquiry to the superintendent for assistance on the process to address your concerns. Additionally, if there are materials that you wish to present or to give to the board, please hand the item or items to our Chief Communications Officer. He will deliver them to the board. Citizens may not interrupt, disturb, or disrupt the Board of Education meeting and will be subject to provisions under the General Statute 143-318.17. Nothing in this policy will prevent the board from limiting public comment at any board meeting. So the first Christina Clark.
I'm
Is
gonna
it-
bring
yeah,
my
the
friend
correct
up here too.
Okay, that's fine.
I'll introduce her.
That's fine.
Hi,
Hello.
esteemed board members. My name is Christina Clark. I'm an English teacher at Cedar Ridge High School, and I'm also the treasurer for the Orange County Association of Educators. This is Miss Janice Gilreath. She's a Spanish teacher at Cedar Ridge and the president of the OCAE. I'm here today to convince you to consider making May 1st an optional teacher workday to show support for the teachers who plan to march with NCAE for their day of action. While many teachers in Orange County may not have taken personal leave this early, I urge you to consider making this decision sooner rather than later. Last year, the district was forced to declare the 16th a workday because so many teachers took personal leave. And then we had to scramble to notify parents and provide lunches and childcare for families. But by making this decision sooner, not only will we all have more time to organize food and childcare, but you will also show teachers that you support their right to be heard by the state legislature, and we won't forget it. If you haven't heard about the May 1st Day of Action, NCAE is marching to demand higher per pupil expenditures for students in our state. Our state has one of the lowest running, about $2,300 less than the national average. Higher wages for bus drivers and other support staff, fewer standardized tests, reinstatement of master's pay, and other important allotments for districts in need. While Orange County is more privileged than most, that does not mean we'll watch other districts suffer around us as they struggle to pay for basic school supplies and clean water. Let's show the rest of the state that the district has leaders that care about North Carolina's students and teachers.
And the only thing we would add to that is that we have appreciated the support we've had from the board in the past, both as, as a local organization and as individual teachers. And just to kind of, I'm sure you've heard the news, but both Chapel Hill and Durham have already stepped up and made 1st a work day to allow us to go and ask for what you need to do, as I think I said last year, to do your jobs, to support us. So, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Latondra Strong.
Madam Chair, other board members, and Dr. Word. I was driving over here, driving home in that terrible storm, and I got like a bunch of phone calls about the policy, the dress code policy that's going to be changed tonight. And when I got home, I flipped it up and I read what was there, and I was alarmed because it was different than what we voted for last year. And I'm grateful for what you did last year. And I think we're making strides. Like as an equity team member, I think we're really, really making headway with regard to equity. And people are watching us. And I know they're watching us because I recently went to the We Are conference where there was lots of people of color in the room. And they were talking about equity, and people bought up what we're doing in this district, in this very small district compared to a lot of districts. So I was notified just before I came in that policy that was online was actually Wake County's policy.
Mm-hmm.
And it took me down a little bit. Because I was like, seriously? We would do this? But I just want to say that you have a strong policy, that I'm doing lots of work in Virginia, and they're watching this policy. Last week, I got 4 phone calls, one from Arkansas, one from South Bend, one from Waynes County, and I forgot what the other one was, but all those people are asking Free Schools to talk to them about how we got our policy changed. People are paying attention to what we're doing in Orange County, and I hope that as you work through the things that you're trying to work through with the dress code policy, I know it's different than that you will maintain what we did last year. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Let me get that. Now we are, that's the last of public comments, and now that we're at board reports and comments, and we'll start with Mr. McKnight.
No report.
Dr. H.
Yeah, I just wanted to praise, Michelle is here, I don't see Connie Crimmins. I just wanted to praise these folks, and Kylie Brown and a few others that were present at the Student Achievement Committee meeting. And I would encourage board members who weren't able to get there to go online and read what took place. I think the relationship that exists right now between C&I, Curriculum and Instruction, and the EC program is the strongest that I've ever witnessed in my history with the school system of 40 years. The outreach that's going on, I was stunned and pleased to hear that you guys are going out to daycare centers. You're going out to daycare centers that serve a population of children whose parents can't afford to go to expensive daycares like the little school, which is very expensive. You're going to community daycare centers and reaching out and seeing how you can help these young people, because you know they're headed to our schoolhouse doors. And then I don't remember who it was who said exactly that you guys are looking at putting together baskets for newborns. That when a child is born in Orange County, and it appears that that child will be coming to the Orange County School District, there would be a welcome basket at birth given to the parents with a whole bunch of stuff in that little basket to help in that development of that child, because up to the age of 3, they're sponges, and they just absorb and absorb and absorb. That was one of the most powerful presentations that I've witnessed since I've been on this board, because it really shows a dedicated group of people going out and trying to help folks in the most challenging job on earth, being a parent and readying your child to learn. There is no other job as demanding and challenging as that. So please express my thanks to others that I didn't mention but who weren't here tonight. But the two of you, Kylie and Michelle, are here, and please tell Connie I just love the work you're doing, and thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Atherton.
Yes, first I'd like to congratulate Cedar Ridge and Orange High School team 587, the Hedgehogs, for a wonderful weekend. They placed second in the state robotics championship, which means they're going to Houston to compete in the world championship. This is a huge deal. Have had the honor in my past history to judge these and see what it takes to do this. This is a significant honor, so I think, you know, it's going to be a wonderful experience for them as well. We had a couple other things. We did have our CTE committee meeting, well attended, covered a lot of items. We'll have the minutes out for that as well. Got the chance to go to the IB art exhibit here in Hillsborough. Wonderful art exhibit from some very talented kids, very amazing. Also excited to hear about one of them going to the naval, you know, architecture, looking at how to build ships. The other one going into more of an engineering role. And then one of the more exciting things is attending the Kids Zoo pop-up ribbon cutting with Ms. Smiley there. It was represented by the town, and Greg Meyer was there, and he double-dutched.
That was impressive.
I know.
So
It's on.
yeah,
It's
that's
on,
my
it's
video.
online.
I recorded and sent him to him, so it was well attended. Lots of activities there. My kids enjoyed it as well. Last item for me is this month is Autism Awareness, and as that, I have a little token for the board.
Thank you.
Thank you, Will.
Just as a little pin. So definitely is that time to just learn a little bit more, and there's lots of activities in the community. That's it for me.
Thank you, Will.
You're welcome.
Mr. Roberts?
Just to follow up on what Dr. Hakiotis was saying, the student achievement meeting was very beneficial. Also attended the CTE ad hoc committee, and then the policy committee.
All right, thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Late last month, I was also able to attend the Let's Talk Racism conference that Ms. Strong mentioned in her comment at North Carolina Central University. It was organized by Rhonda Taylor Bullock, who is the founder of a nonprofit the nonprofit We Are, working to extend anti-racist education. She also happens to be married to the equity director of DPS, Dr. Kelvin Bullock. I professionally, I think he goes by Daniel Bullock, actually, excuse me. The keynote was about opportunity hoarding in public education, and specifically how white supremacy is embedded in school organizations and what we can do about it. There were amazing educational breakout sessions that covered all kinds of equity-related issues in school. I saw Sharita Cobb there this year, and I just hope that more folks from OCS will be able to join next year, because it was incredible, and everyone in this room could take huge things from this day. Next year it's going to be on Saturday, March 21st, so mark your calendars. In the last several weeks, I have heard and seen many conversations online, both in our community and more broadly, about discrimination against Jewish and Muslim people. I want to take this moment to categorically denounce violence against any group of people, specifically the violence and terrorism we have seen in synagogues and mosques around the world in recent months. On a local level, I always welcome conversation and feedback about how OCS can be a more welcoming and affirming community to all of our students. I also wanted to mention that April is Autism Awareness Month, and honor our students and families, and tell you that I'm so grateful for your presence in our schools. The richness of neurodiversity in OCS adds so much, and makes us a stronger and more dynamic school system. Two very special events are happening in the district next week: the Exceptional Children Games and also the Central Piedmont Junior Livestock Show. So I'm looking forward to both of those, and I am hoping lots of folks will come out to support both of those events. And that's all I got.
I always go after Hillary.
I'll change that.
It's all right. Yeah, I went to the policy committee, enjoyed our conversation there, and then went to the Kids Zoo events, and it was, I was so glad that they had these free events during our spring break that kids could come to, and my kids got to see a little symphony and make some little instruments and do a little bit of like circuit boarding stuff, and it was all very cool. And then they're planning a new location, and everyone who went could vote on which of these features are important to you. You know, things like proximity to public transportation. How important is the cost to you? How important is it that the signage be in multiple languages? All these things, and people could sort of give feedback. So I liked how they sort of built that in as an opportunity. I hope lots of our families went and shared what they thought.
Thank you. Well, I attended the policy committee and the student achievement committee as well. I was one of 3 delegates to represent North Carolina last week during a school board association conference, and I went to a number of seminars, but one that really was very telling, and I thought about something that Steve mentioned earlier tonight. The president of the Society of Human Resources said to us that there's a disconnect, and that we're not preparing our public school students for work anymore. And he said that because they're finding, because he's the head of the HR Society, students can't write a simple paragraph because they spend so much time texting and it's all abbreviated, and they find students can't communicate the way they used to, which is making it difficult, of course, to find good workers. On Saturday, I learned that one of our community partners is working with Cedar Ridge to form a MAP group. And this effort is being led by one of our retired teachers. And I'm bringing this up because I think it's wonderful when we have community partners who's actually getting out there doing something. And I read today that a number of, from CNN, a number of children seen in ERs for suicidal thoughts and attempts has doubled. And for that, I'm going to put in all of your boxes a sheet that I picked up at a neighboring school that students can pick up anywhere. And I just want you all to see it and see what you think about it. And I'm going to share it with Dr. Wirt. It's in the car, and I don't want to go back out in the rain. It's just, well, you know. students can fill these sheets out, because sometimes they're uncomfortable with running to the office, or somebody might see them going to the office or talking to a teacher. But if these sheets are placed about for them to just pick up, because I picked one up when I was in the school in Person County School, they can just check off what they're feeling and drop it off wherever, media center, and leave it in the classroom. So I just think it's just another outlet. And I thought about that when I read the CNN study. As a reminder, Friday is the date for eggs and electives. I've been going to those for the last 5 years. It's not going to be at UN Center at USC, one of those wonderful fancy places. They're having it at K&W this year. As he laughs, but I'll still go.
It's quite a change, that's why.
That's exactly right. Exit, so I'm sure you all probably got the, it's a free breakfast for elected officials.
We've got budget committee.
Huh?
We've got budget committee.
It's at 8 o'clock in the morning, and so I plan to go to both of them. I was sent an email from Nina Day apologizing for the late request, and this goes to what Will mentioned about the robotics, and so she was apologizing for the late request, but Dr. Wirt will expound on that because they didn't know they were going to win. So, you know, so of course they didn't have a early request. And I will share with you, I have my little certificate showing that I actually participated in the Delegates Assembly. Because we spent a lot of, last week, we spent a lot of time working on resolutions and policies. And I have a book filled with resolutions and policies. So of course, Todd probably got enough of them, but I'll pass them on to he and or Seth, because there's more policies and resolutions than you'd ever want. But a lot of these have been sent to Washington. You know, people love resolutions and policies.
I'm like, I want one.
I know. Well, look, we spent. The meeting started at 7:15 in the morning, and it lasted left to 4. I mean, that's a long time to talk about resolutions and policies, but so I deserve that certificate. All right, so that's all I have. Thank you, Dr.
That's a motion, I'll second.
Right.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a few things Ms. Stevens did mention. I have added to Assembly just late this afternoon the school trip request for the robotics team to be able to go to Texas. I asked Ms. Stevens if that was okay. So tonight, when you approve the school trip requests, we will be approving for those students to be able to go to Houston and compete in the World Championships.
Isn't that cool? The world.
That's right. Just want to do a little education. There's been a lot of highlight in the news and the community over the last week about Senate Bill 580, which sounds fantastic when it first comes out. Senate Bill 580, if you saw the press release, had Senator Berger, State Superintendent Mark Johnson, as well as State Board Member J.B. Buxton on stage talking about giving teachers $400 to be able to spend through an app how they see fit. Again, on the very surface, I don't think any of us, including any of our staff, would disagree with giving an additional dollar amount to teachers so they wouldn't have to spend their own money to buy supplies. However, what's not being shared as much publicly is that that money is simply a shell game and being reallocated out of the classroom materials and instructional supplies and equipment allotment that we get. Last year, that allotment was roughly $223,000, and we allotted all of that money to our 13 schools based on their membership. Schools then use that money to purchase books, supplies, a lot of paper. So if we were to allocate, and this is just a quick figure that Ms. Rath ran for us, the $400 per teacher, that would take up about $212,000 of that $223,000. Meaning, and what's fascinating is that the bill itself says the funds appropriated for the program shall be used to supplement the materials and supplies otherwise available. Well, they don't supplement because it's not new money. The word there really should be supplant in the bill if they're going to be honest about what they're doing. So, again, there is no lack of support from me if the General Assembly wants to give an additional dollar allotment so that teachers have some flexibility to be able to spend money on supplies that they may need. But teachers ultimately with this will have to buy their own copy paper, their own, all of those sorts of supplies that they would need in the classroom, and or we would have to dip into more local funds, which I think we all know there's not an excess of those right now. The other thing that's important for everybody to know is that charter schools do not have to participate if this is passed, because evidently they don't believe there's a bureaucracy like me and the rest of our central office team that is ineffectively spending the money over the course of the year. So charter schools could opt in if they would like, but otherwise don't have to participate. So again, just felt like it was important to do a little education on Senate Bill 580 tonight. Also, try not to get political, but just have to every now and then. So
That's a good thing for you.
yes, sir.
Yes.
Thanks. So this week is National Assistant Principal Recognition Week. We have 18 hardworking assistant principals in our system that do a lot of work that goes unseen by the general public on a daily basis. So just want to thank those folks, and if you're out in schools or if you see any of our APs this week, certainly give them an extra pat on the back. And just on a personal note, I got to spend about an hour and a half with 10 teachers from Haiti on Skype this afternoon. You know, it did a couple things, like their energy and questions and inquiry about how to become better teachers was really inspiring. The lack of resources and training that they have is tragic. But they were a ton of fun to spend an hour and a half with, and it's something that I plan to do on a regular basis, and also figure out how I and maybe our district can support some of these schools that really have very little resources and teachers that are working extremely hard in some really impoverished areas in Haiti. So it's just a good sort of personal fulfillment activity this afternoon, but hope to share more about that in the future. But it also made me realize how very fortunate we are here in the U.S. in our public schools.
Chapel Hill Carborough City Schools recently took a trip to Haiti to try to recruit teachers for their school system. So it's just interesting to hear. That's great. Thank you.
That's all.
Yes, sir.
Well, what would be wrong with looking at adopting a school or a school district down there as a sister district?
I don't see, I would love to come and talk about that more in the future.
There are
Dr.
several churches in Orange County that do this kind of outreach, and I think it's something that'd be exciting for a school board initiative.
That's right. That's a good point. Oh, you know, before we go to the next item, I forgot to mention, because the three of us probably forgot, but I guess it's on me to mention it. So we are responding to another request from Justice United. They have asked that Todd do a presentation on Thursday night, because Thursday morning the three of us have a meeting in Chapel Hill at 8 o'clock. And it'll last for several hours. But Thursday night, Justice United has asked that we come out to Cedar Grove, and Todd has a presentation, and we will be in a fishbowl seating arrangement for this event. So I thought it was important for me to share with the board what we're doing. Thank you. Who am I saying thank you to myself? All right, so next I'll entertain a motion for this consent agenda, this revised consent agenda.
Yeah, and it's got the revised personnel report too, so yeah.
Motion to approve revised consent agenda.
And we have a second. So all in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, so adopted. Thank you very much. So the next item that's on our agenda is the local current expense budget approval 2019-2020.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If it pleases the board tonight, Ms. Rath was just going to go straight to this sort of spreadsheet overview. We've done the presentation a number of times at this point. You know, we are at a place in the timeline where we certainly are asking for approval of the board's budget tonight so that we can get that on to the county. So I'll turn it over to Ms. Rath.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening.
The last time that I was before you on March the 25th, we had a local budget increase of approximately $215 per pupil. And included in that budget was professional development for our equity initiative, reinstating the first 5 days for our teacher assistants, the addition of a literacy facilitator, 2 additional guidance counselors, addition of a custodial manager, and implementing a recruitment and talent management model. During this meeting, there was discussion, and you had requested that we make some adjustments to that budget request, and that is what I have before you this evening.
You had requested that we align the Human Capital Management Director with the Equity Initiative, having this position report directly to the Chief Equity Officer, and as you will notice, that's how we have broken that out here. You also asked that we add an additional 5 working days for our teacher assistants, bringing that up to 10 days for next year versus 5. You also asked us to take a look at costing out 4 weeks of paid maternity, paternity leave for eligible staff. When we took a look at that based upon a 3-year average of the number of staff that we have that take maternity leave, we have included in our budget 4 weeks of paid leave for approximately 20 staff, which is what it has been averaging over the last 3 years. And as you can see there, that would equate to approximately $150,000. You had also asked and requested that we restore the teacher-student ratio in grades 4 to 8 to 1 to 25 versus the 1 to 27 that we had to do last year in order to balance our local budget. So therefore, implementing these changes brings our total budget request to a $273 per pupil increase, or an additional $2.1 million. Any questions?
Yes, so Hillary and Will.
So, going back to parental leave for just a moment, I just want a little clarity around how you got that number, because I know that probably fewer men are taking paternity, 4 weeks of paternity perhaps, if they don't already have it, since it would have to be FMLA, I'm assuming. So, or I guess for a minute would be vacation. So, are we factoring in the men that are having babies into this number? Like, I just don't want it to fall short of what we would need to cover men being out also.
I think that's a great question. You know, based upon our historical numbers, the 20 is probably inflated to incorporate any men who may seek to utilize that eligible benefit.
Mm-hmm.
But by any means, if we feel like that we may need to relook that to incorporate a higher number, that is definitely something that can be done.
Okay, and okay, I'm blanking on my second question.
Okay,
Thank
well, maybe we'll come back to it. Will?
First of all, thank you for all your hard work and your staff on this. I know it's kind of challenging with all the different views on it. My question was similar to Hillary's, was if the men were covered as well that could take off if their wife, if they're working in the school system or not. That was my first question. It sounds like it is.
Mm-hmm.
The second question I have is maybe more for you, Dr. Wirt, is I know you're working in collaboration with, you know, Chapel Hill, Carrboro, and I'm curious where their number is to ours, and you know, how are y'all feeling us progressing, if you will?
Yeah, sure. So there is a series of training that we're looking at doing together that we both have a very common figure on that'll be based on the number of participants. Ours, I haven't seen exactly what their total PD ask. We've been in great communication about what our portion would be, but there are some things that I want to do additionally that maybe Chapel Hill would not do in the first year, and as we get a new equity officer, there's just some school level training that Chapel Hill may be a little further along because they have historically done a lot of equity training. Maybe not further along in their implementation, but they've certainly done a lot of training, whereas we haven't done as much of that. So a lot of the joint professional development that we're planning right now is around leadership, equity leadership, but we definitely want to make an effort in sort of a scaled out over time way of getting this down to the roughly 600 teachers that we have and 1,100 employees. So I'm not sure exactly, I haven't seen their final equity ask. I don't know if you have, Rhonda, but we have been in communication about what we'll do from a joint model, what our share of that would be, and then ours also incorporates some additional funds for us to do some additional work. So we've talked to really 2 different organizations. One is Pacific Education Group that does a training around courageous conversations around race, especially in a public education setting. Some other districts, well, all over the country have used it, and some neighboring districts in North Carolina have. And then we've also looked at some training that REI would offer, specifically their groundwater training first, that we could do with a large number of people to do some initial racial equity awareness, really, with a large group of people. So it's a combination of both groups at this time.
But, okay, but
please.
Steve
No, go
has.
ahead, go ahead.
I was just gonna ask if, I heard you say eligible employees several times. What are the stipulations gonna be if we did have maternity and paternity leave? Do we know that
Can I
at this
interject
point?
one thing on that, if I could? I
Yeah.
mean, my suggestion was gonna be if you hopefully do have the good fortune that the money comes in that would cover all of this and you go with that, that would need to go to, I think, the policy committee. So
Okay.
that some of those, because there are a number of questions that I would have as well, and unless you feel like you have all the answers today, I would think it would be helpful.
No.
Well, I was
that.
just wondering, in acquiring the data, like if she was looking at, you know, the first year employees or something weren't eligible, I just didn't know if there was something you had used to calculate the number that you already had in
So
mind.
typically for
No.
FMLA,
Okay,
you have
got
to
it.
be here a year, there's lots of things, adoption, this, that,
That's
and
why
the
I was asking.
Yes, okay. Dr. H.
Yeah, this budget has really developed into a nice budget. Initially, when this came to the budget committee, this number was under $200 a head, if I remember correctly. And Chapel Hill Caborough's numbers were up over $400 a head, if I remember correctly. Is that right?
Yes, sir, that is right.
And so now we've brought it up to a level that I think shows a sense of equity with the assistive system, since they've been in the news the last couple of days about maternity, paternity leave, and by both systems asking for this, which county employees already get, right?
Yes, they do.
Didn't we hear that?
Yes. Yeah, I got it.
So there's a sense of equity there between the two school systems getting the same stuff that Chapel Hill Caboroughh, I mean, that Orange County government's been getting for years. And I think it's just much stronger. It shows our commitment to getting our teacher assistants back. It shows our commitment to the equity initiative. I just think it's good. And I think that number, 273, is a nice number. And I just wanted to point that out. I
It's
like it.
nice. Yeah,
It's a lot better than under 200.
okay. I'm gonna keep it moving.
Okay, that's
That's
all.
Oh, all right. You should get to the head like I thought she was going to.
I'm sorry.
Oh,
That's
no,
all
that's
I
good.
have.
And you know what, Steve is correct, and the counties had that leave forever.
30, 40 years.
Right, because I'd say at least 40, because that's my son's age, and I went on leave, and it was paid leave.
As
Everybody
a
at
result
home
of
knows
county
that.
policy.
Right, so.
It's true.
That is true, so it's true, so the county employees had it for a long time. So it's time for us to, and thank you for putting it on the table, Ms. McKenzie. All right, so do we have any further discussion? Looks good. So, I can't see, is
An
that
action
an
item.
item?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All right. That's, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Well, so adopted, we've got ourselves a budget.
Thank you.
That's wonderful. Ooh. All right, we're gonna move on to this. What's the next item on here? The board policy committee recommendations, first reading approval.
The giant.
Is that, whoa, yeah, that is a giant.
So it is a lengthy list. The policy committee did really excellent work our last time together, and we still didn't get to all of these, but these are all updates related to the, as you know, the service that we subscribe to with the North Carolina School Boards Association. They send us regular updates that may be based on legislation or, you know, as I said, changes in general statute or just recommended changes to policies. Historically, I would not go through each and every one of these, and certainly if you have a question about a specific policy that's in the list, myself or staff that are here would be happy to answer those, but if there are no questions, I certainly would be seeking approval tonight.
Yes.
Got one question.
Yes.
So if I'm looking at policy code 6315, and all the stuff we see in the news, and I'm not talking about Orange County stuff, but some ridiculous things that school bus drivers have done over the last couple of years. You would assume that people who have a policy like this and have read it and have had people explain it to them, that we wouldn't have any problem. It's right to the point, it's simple to understand, and I'm assuming that we have an intensive training program for bus drivers. I know they used to have an intensive training program, but I know things change all the time. That this policy, if adopted, will be part of that training program, right?
Yes, sir, and this policy is identical to the one that we've had in place. I have participated in the start of the year training that we do with all of our bus drivers. And then I know that Mr. Bryant, one of Mr. Bryant's staff members, when we hire a new driver, goes through this policy among others. But I have witnessed us reviewing this policy line by line with our bus drivers.
Okay. It's just a change in the legal reference
Right.
on that one. And I can certainly attest that the policy committee went through these line by line though. And they are mostly all driven by legal changes.
Okay, so I will entertain a motion.
To approve.
First
Second.
reading.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So our first reading is passed unanimously. Thank you very much. The next item on our agenda is the Advanced Ed Accreditation Update.
So as Ms. Woodson's coming to the podium, she has an update that we were not expecting from Advanced Ed, but we wanted to sort of inform the board on some recent information we've gotten. As you heard tonight, Advanced Ed, for those of you that may not know, are the accrediting agency for our school system. So Ms. Woodson.
This is exciting news, actually.
Exciting for us.
Well, you look excited.
Yeah, Advanced Ed is the accreditation organization that works with many schools in the state of North Carolina and certainly with Orange County schools as well. And due to our good standing, they have requested effectively that we would push back what would have been our scheduled accreditation visit, which would be the 19-20 school year. And it will be delayed because of our good standing. Ultimately, what will happen is that they are undergoing a reform process themselves about how they will accredit agencies. And once they have that new model in place, they will put us back into the cycle so that we will become a part of that same process that would have already been there. But they are just sent a letter and notifying us that we would not need to do any further action and that they would just allow us to continue as we have been. And if we had any questions or any further clarification, we could certainly contact them.
Oh, that's good news, yes, sir?
And just a comment for the benefit of new board members. We went through this 5 years ago, and it costs money. The consultant alone was close to $50,000. We had a lot of it. It's an expensive process to go through. And the expensive piece is one thing. The labor intensity on the part of board members is something else. And the assemblage of community interest groups, many, many hours. And that's why you need a consultant. Somebody working down here cannot do this.
That's right.
You have to bring in an outside consultant. It's a very intensive process, and they take it seriously, and you have to budget for it, which we haven't done, so it's good to delay it.
Yeah. Right. So, yes.
Can I ask a quick question? Do you know what it means when it says it's they're developing a continuous accreditation experience? Is it not all like a big bang thing like that?
So I've contacted them both by phone and by email. So this is really what I'm seeing kind of across the nation with how people are looking at a continuous cycle of improvement is what they will ultimately do is ask school districts to upload evidences, right, of what we're doing to an electronic platform, but then they will also be able to tailor their questions and specifically look at what areas in the organization they would like to focus on and what they would want to seek more information around, as opposed to coming in and trying to get a baseline understanding without anything, without any prior knowledge. So they're indicating that if there's a school district that might be having some challenges, they have more opportunity to follow up with them rather than, again, it being a one-shot deal that may be a one-time event.
Thank you. William.
So
In the letter that was attached, I saw that they actually gave us two options. One was to just delay it to later, and then the other one was the opt-out. But I didn't see where it would go to. Does that mean it's just a year out if you opt out, or they're just gonna tell us and say, hey, yours is next year?
At this point, I don't know, and
Okay.
they don't know.
Okay.
Because I think that's exactly part of the process that they're trying to determine. As they're moving to a new model, they're gonna look at what that notification process will be. Now, when I spoke with, wasn't this person another woman named Susie?
Mhm.
She certainly indicated that they would give us prior notice for up to a year, and that they would be doing that for all districts. And I think their goal is to give a 5-year cycle so that you would be able to see where you were moving through that 5-year cycle.
Okay, thank you.
Right, that's great. Thank you very much. We appreciate that news. So now, our next item is the staff calendar revisions, teacher workdays.
So Madam Chair, I
Yes.
do have one
Okay.
question. Given the item you added to the bottom, would it make more sense to have that discussion here if we're gonna approve the staff calendar, if we can do that?
We can certainly have, I mean, I have a request
He has.
regarding that tonight, but we can certainly have that discussion
Well,
here.
I just feel awkward if we approve this and then later on we amended the approval, anyway.
Yeah, sure.
Sorry.
It's whatever you wanna do. I'm sure you thought about it before we
did.
talked about it.
Jason, why don't you present your part?
Yeah, we do it, and
And
then
then
we'll-
I'll fill in from there. That's great.
That will work. Well, as you know, we had to close the school system for students and staff first semester a few times due to weather. In doing so, we must add days to the staff calendar to meet the state 215 staff workday requirement. To comply with general statute, 4 additional workdays were added to the traditional calendar at the end of the year, and 4 additional workdays were added to the year-round calendar to comply with the required 215 days for 10-month staff. Student days have been accounted for in the instruction hours. There will be no impact to the student calendar. The draft calendars being presented tonight are for the board, for you all to consider and act on for this current school year.
Yes, they are.
I have a clarification question. So the teacher workdays, some of them are named as mandated and some of them are not. Does that mean that those other days are optional? And then if they're optional, is that part of the 215 days are actually optional days?
Yes, about 215.
So you have to have 215 days for your teacher work, but some of them can be optional?
They can take leave on an optional work.
They're allowed to take leave on those days, but the other days they're not.
Correct.
Okay.
Do you have any additional questions?
No, the only question I had is, depending on the board's pleasure, the one thing I would like is that we update the text. I noticed that the color coding was added, but the text in the actual center wasn't changed. I mean, I actually printed them out because I didn't see a difference from the original. So if we could just add the text in to help.
Okay, thanks.
So I'm happy to provide a little information. This helps from adding this at the end, and certainly our teacher, I think, that's still here, that's been anxiously waiting for us to talk about this.
Before you start, well, is this, because we added the item as an agenda item to the end.
Right.
And so so according to our agenda, it's already been voted on and it's at the end.
It's at the end, so yes, you can work through it. You can, if you wanna do this all at once, then the motion could also be to amend the agenda.
Motion to
to-
amend the agenda and move this item to current.
To include it with this.
Second.
All right, so we have a motion to amend the agenda and so we got a
Consolidate
to
the last
consolidate the
item with
last
this
item.
item.
So that way it won't be there. I just wanted to clean it up.
I appreciate it.
All right, so, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, so we have cleaned it up.
Right.
All right.
So your second question is whether you vote on this and then that, or it seems to be.
Yes, we're gonna do it separately,
Okay. Okay,
because we wanna get this done. I wanna keep it clean.
that's fine, that keeps
Okay.
it clean.
All right, so, how do you all feel about this item? Will?
I was gonna motion.
No, go ahead.
No, do you?
No,
do you
no,
have a-
it's fine, it's fine.
If you have discussion,
No,
please.
no, it's good, I'm good.
Yep.
Make a motion.
Thank
will
you.
you?
Come on, we can be here at 10
Wait,
o'clock.
all right.
No, we wanna
Wait,
vote.
So I make a motion to approve and make sure we add the text.
Second.
All right, those, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, so the text is there, so now for the second item,
Thank
all
you.
right.
So as you know, we do have the Teacher Action Day that was mentioned tonight coming up on May 1st. Last year, our board certainly did make a decision which was later in the process, but was very much based on data. When we make a decision like this, and when I make a recommendation to you, it's has to be based on what the data is telling me and our effective way to run the school district from an operational standpoint in a given day. While I have great support for the teachers and ultimately it may be the decision, what the data tells me today is that there are currently 30 teachers asking for leave in our system. As of this evening, we have 160 active subs. On any given typical day in the school system, we have 30 to 40 subs. Let me just, before I sort of ask what I would like to come from the board tonight, just a few things that you should know if we were to decide to make this an optional teacher workday. We do have banked hours for students, so students would not have to make the day up. It, again, would be an optional workday, so for those that would like to work, can work, and we've already discussed that this would be a day that teacher assistants would be able to work as well, because this was not an expected workday during the year. Mr. Stevens is investigating the opportunity to have some childcare in different locations in the system and provide a working opportunity for folks. And certainly last year we worked with a variety of community partners to provide meals, which was a big hit with our community, and frankly was a great opportunity for us to collaborate across the system. So we've already had discussions about that internally. What I would like to ask of the board is, in the event that I don't want to bring this back at a much later date, is for you to grant me the authority to make this decision. I'd like to make it by the end of the week. That's certainly, I know what Durham, Chapel Hill, and at this point Lexington City Schools are the 3 districts in the state that have gone ahead and made this an optional teacher workday. I've talked to some our other surrounding districts, a couple of which are waiting till later in the week till the data supports that decision, which is what I would like to do as well. I've urged our principals to ask their teachers if they plan to participate. Please go ahead and submit your leave so that we can make a database decision. So again, I don't want this to be portrayed as I don't support the teacher's right to move and to take action. I just have to make a recommendation to you that's based on what the data is telling me right now, not necessarily how I feel or we may feel politically. So what I'm asking tonight is that the board would approve to grant me the authority to make this decision, as I would with weather delays and anything else. Certainly I would update you each day this week about what the data is telling us, would communicate with you before a recommendation is made, but again, make that decision by the end of this week to give families plenty of time for childcare, us plenty of time to arrange childcare and other things that may be in place.
Yes.
So I totally appreciate that perspective, and I appreciate that your job is to run the school system from an operational standpoint. I'm a politician, I guess, as a school board member, and I really believe in activism, and I believe in sending messages to the legislature. I think that Ms. Clark did an excellent job presenting this information and basically how I feel about it. I know off the top of my head, I could name several teachers who want to go to Raleigh but don't have the time because they have kids at home and have already had to burn their days because of sick kids or other family circumstances. I think that this is an easy way for us to support our teachers and supporting our students, because if they're happy and they're supported and they have this time to go advocate for themselves and it matters and something comes from it, even if it's down the road, that's good for our students and good for the morale of our teachers. So I'm in favor of calling it now and supporting our teachers. That's me.
Steve?
Well,
I'm sorry.
I wholeheartedly agree with you, Hillary. And I just did some simple math, and this number is higher than some of you are old. In 1973, 46 years ago, I got on a yellow activity bus with a group of teachers from Orange High to go harangue the legislature about teacher salaries. And we were walking down Hillsborough Street and people were throwing 50-cent pieces and quarters at us saying, you want to raise, here, take this. And I think a lot of teachers are afraid, and I think teachers are looking to us to give them an opportunity to stand up and be brave. And anything we can do to help teachers stand up and be brave, like teachers in West Virginia, Colorado, Kentucky, all over the country have done. And I think the latest number that came out was we're 37th. And I saw our illustrious state superintendent on the news this morning asking teachers not to leave, stay in your classrooms. He should be out there advocating for teachers. He should be fighting for every teacher in this state, and he's not. So I appreciate the job you do, Todd. I respect the job you do, but we have a political job to do to send a political message. And as a matter of fact, I'd be happy to sign a resolution about Senate Bill 580 and call it out for what you said it is. A hoax, bunch of baloney, smoke and mirrors. So let's make a decision tonight and support our teachers. And I bet that number of 30 that said they'll take leave now will double and triple as soon as the teachers hear what we did here tonight. And we need to send that message. We're with them, behind them, and supporting them all the way.
Okay. And Will wanted to say something, and then Mr. Attorney.
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing. I don't know why we should wait. I'm taking off that day. I will be there. I've talked to legislators. They told me this is the one most powerful thing we can do is to show unity and be there. So I don't see a reason personally to wait.
All right, so Mr. Roberts, then Mr. Attorney.
I think we need to approve it also tonight for two reasons. One, it shows the support for our teachers, and then it also gives our parents plenty of opportunity to prepare for it.
It gives us more time to.
Okay, Mr. Attorney.
And I'm interpreting the board's comments also in part, and to Dr. Hakiotis' point, that you all are reasonably anticipating a substantial increase in that number and want to just go ahead and get notice out at this point. That's what I'm hearing from you guys about it.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Just want to say, I fully support this. I'm just doing my job.
I know. I know. And what I love.
I just don't want this to be like a superintendent against the teachers.
But
just doing my job.
No,
certainly.
and I see what the attorney is saying. He's saying, you know, you're good. You're doing your job too. Well, speaking of people doing their jobs, I would love for the individuals who decide to have this once a year to go on and get it on the calendar, so we won't have to scramble.
I agree with that.
Because we have an established calendar, and each year, I went last year, so I went to Raleigh, I supported our teachers, I was over there on May 15th last year, but we had it last year, we're having it again this year, so it seems like a pattern. Let's get it on the calendar. So I talked to Todd earlier, and I said, well, you know, please try to communicate to individuals that's planning this, and I certainly will, because I think it helps in planning ahead so we can get it on our calendars, so teachers won't have to, you know, second guess or wonder what we're going to do. Because we'll know what we're going to do if they know what they're going to do and get it on the calendar if it's going to be every May. And then there's a few other groups who'd like to do something in tandem and get over there also. So this is an action item. And yes, go on, Hillary, make that motion.
Motion to make May 1st a optional teacher workday.
Is that the correct terminology? And did we have a second from Dr. H? All right, so it's been moved and properly seconded that May 1st will be an optional teacher workday. All in favor, let it be known as by sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposed, please raise your hand. Yeah, call you out.
You'll call them out.
Call you out. All right. So thank you very much. And I was teasing about that, but so that is so adopted. Thank you very much. And so now our next item will be our student fees.
Same as last year.
Same as last year. Is that what you're going to say?
They are.
All right, so.
Good evening. I am here to present to you the students' fees for the 1920 school year. To comply with Board Policy 4600, it is the superintendent shall annually submit a schedule of fees to the board for approval. in the spring of each year, and I'm here to do exactly that. If a student is unable to pay their student fees, a waiver request is provided to that parent and or student, and those are, the program administrator for each one of these programs would make sure that those parents are notified of the opportunity for that to happen. I do want to also mention that the driver's education fee that we charge in Orange County schools is a flat $50 fee for all students. That is lower than what the state recommends at $65 per student for the driver's education fee as well. That has been in place for 2 years, and those fees are used to offset costs for salaries, gas, vehicle maintenance, repairs, and replacements. So that's exactly what those are for. There is an attached document that indicates the fees for the various schools that we have in place, and again, these fees are exactly what we had in the past year.
All right, so there's no change, but you have a comment?
I've
You
got
have a
one, too.
comment?
You had your hand up.
Okay, come on
Thank you
now.
very much. This may sound ridiculous, but Chair Stevens brought this up a couple of years ago. I can buy a recorder, and I have 4 grandsons, so I go through a lot of musical instruments. They break them over each other's heads and everything else. For $1 at Dollar Tree, why do we have to pay $4 for a simple recorder?
So what I could answer what I am aware of when I was an elementary principal, and I can get more clarity if you'd like me to, but basically it comes also with a music book, so they come together, and the music teacher is able to use, so the kids are able to take it home, it shows where their fingers go for the notes, and they're able to do both of those things at the same time. That's what I was afforded at the secondary.
I remember those things.
Because they can't break each other's heads with the music book, but they can do it with the
Yeah.
recorder.
They
Okay.
can't break their head with the music.
Will, you had a comment.
Yeah, so I was just curious on the waivers. Are those waivers offset by the school system?
It's a
or
variety of budgets, so it depends on where the funding for that particular source comes from, but some of it comes from curriculum and instruction, so it depends on the cost and the overall amount, but it'll move through the school system, yes.
So who ultimately approves it?
Approves that.
Yeah, because the real question I'm getting to, and I'll just cut to the chase, is do we turn any of those down? I mean,
At this point, we have not, to my knowledge, and we've done a good bit of research, we do not turn any of them down.
okay, great. I mean, some of these are really high
Mhm.
for some of
If
the
you
programs.
ask, you receive.
Yeah, all right
Awesome.
now.
That's it for me.
All right, Steve had something in here.
Well, several years ago, we uncovered that fees that parents were paying for marching bands were going to the marching band booster clubs. And we stopped that. I want to make sure that that still is in play. Those fees stay at the school, not to a booster club, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
All right, Hillary.
My comment is something kind of different. I'm looking at Cedar Ridge, and I see chorus uniform fee for male students, and I see chorus uniform fee for female students. I'm assuming that's like a gown and a tuxedo. And I understand those are different prices, but I have a problem with this being gendered. And I'm hoping, I think that as an equity issue is a microaggression to our LGBTQ students. And I'm hoping that all of our uniforms can be presented as tuxedo and gown. Pick the one that makes you comfortable and do your thing. I think 99% of kids will probably pick the expected item, but I don't think that we should be calling it male and female, and I think that that is a piece of low-hanging fruit we could pluck to make a lot of LGBTQ
I
students
totally
feel
agree.
much more at home.
That's great, yeah, I would absolutely agree with that.
Yep.
Thank you.
That's a very good point. That's one session that I went to.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, when I was in Philadelphia. They're talking about taking gender neutral off bathrooms. Don't say that anymore.
And if you'll notice, that is listed that way under Orange Hives.
It
Right.
So
Well,
we're
I
trying
just
to
wonder
make it
what's being
consistent.
said in classes. Like, I don't care what's coming to me, but I do care about
Yeah.
the forms that are going out to students. So, would it be possible, I guess, this would be for next year, that we get a copy of whatever form goes out to the choral and band I just would like to see how it's presented to students. Like, is it,
I think we can.
I mean, are the teachers saying, like, we talk about these things, but I wanna make sure that they're actually happening in practice also. And I'm not trying to micromanage, but I'm just really interested in seeing it happen.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Picking up on that, if you look at Cedar Ridge, concert band attire if needed, 80 to 100. Concert band attire if needed, females, 75.
Yeah, same thing.
So
yeah.
you should go through the whole list
Agree.
and clean it up.
I will do that.
Okay. All right, so, this is or was an information item, so we don't need to vote on it. But my, question is, do you have any more questions, comments?
Should we bring this back next time? We'll come back to the next.
All right,
always
so-
comes back to
All
the
right, so
next
thank you
consent.
very much. Thank you very much. Now we're on to our student dress code policy discussion.
Sure. So thank you, Ms. Stevens. So tonight we, we normally discuss policies pretty explicitly in policy committee, and when we bring them to the full board, they're typically for approval at that point. The reality is with the student dress code policy, we are backed up against our timeline of our district code of conduct as well. So I had requested with the policy committee if I could bring forward this policy for a discussion of the full board because we are up against a timeline. And I would even ask the board to consider tonight, if we get to a place where you feel very comfortable with what we've created, even consider a waiver of first reading and just pass our policy tonight, if we get to that place. If not, because we are trying to make sure this is included in the code of conduct. There was a brief discussion, briefer than we thought, at the last policy committee. In your materials tonight is our current student dress code policy, 4316, and a draft of what is yet to be approved by the Wake County Public School System. That draft is a little bit different than what the policy committee looked at our last meeting. However, to Ms. Strong, a member of our community, I can assure you there is no intention of changing the hard work that was done on our policy before. And I would say that in many ways our policy is, as you noted, incredibly strong in a lot of particular areas. So with that said, to help expedite the discussion tonight, I did, if it's okay with the board, walk in a draft for us to maybe take a look at as a group that would include some of the thoughts of the policy committee, and just have a discussion about that might help more efficiently drive our conversation. I have copies for others as well, if that's the direction you'd like to go.
Yes, that's the direction.
I've got a question.
Yes, sir?
I read this, I was totally confused. I really didn't know what was going on. And I couldn't figure out, after all the hard work that we did, I didn't know if you were recommending to throw policy 4316 out and adopt this thing that came from an unidentified school system?
Right.
Are you talking about adding it to the current policy? I didn't know what was going on.
It sounded like the Tom.
No,
So-
I
was the same way.
I was the same way.
I was the same
Came in
way.
and said, here's our current policy, and then here's 4316.
Right.
And I thought we were just throwing everything that we had done out.
Yeah, because we put a lot of hard work in that.
A whole lot of hard work in on that.
Oh, no, yeah, Dr. Wirt had requested that we work through it all together as a board rather than him putting a draft into this. I said, okay, and so now he's got a draft here for us, but I was sort of heeding his request to not come through with a draft, but in no way were we taking weights and replacing
right.
this
So
at all.
was this to add something from the
There's some
unfulfilled
pieces.
Wake thing?
Yes,
Oh,
Yes,
and so we just wanted to work through it all together, not
Well-
in any way replace.
I feel better about that
Right.
because
You
I
don't
was-
think I was gonna
Well, I
take
couldn't,
that out, do you?
quite honestly, I couldn't figure it out.
I know, you was saying,
I was,
what?
just like Ms. Strong said a few minutes ago, I was totally puzzled.
Yes,
you
she
know?
was.
We would be taking a step back
Yeah.
rather than keep moving ahead.
Not one step back.
So that's good.
No, that's what Judge Barbara says. All right, so, who's gonna drive this train?
I'm happy to, if that's okay.
Okay, we want you to.
So I have tried to make it as clear as possible by color coding.
Yes.
Everything that's in black is our current policy. It is language that we worked incredibly hard on. The first edition that the policy committee discussed, in Wake's draft, there is a list that gets much more specific about some articles of clothing, and I did make a little bit of an adjustment to what Wake has, and I'm happy to call that out. But when you get to the blue section at the bottom, these were a series of bullets that I've sort of followed their work, and certainly Jonathan could speak to it, that gets more specific about what students can wear and should wear. first bullet there, I'm happy to walk through these. Students must wear clothing that covers their skin from chest to mid-thigh with opaque fabric in front, back, and on the sides.
Okay, you don't have to read all that.
Okay.
I didn't want you to
Fine by
get to
me,
the third
yeah.
bullet and start reading.
Yeah, I'd prefer not to, so.
Okay.
She's laughing. I guess it might be great if we give the board a chance to read through those 6 bullets and any
Well,
questions,
we're
concerns
laughing
you
at
might
that,
have.
but if you're a high school principal or a middle school principal or an elementary principal, that could become a big issue.
Oh, yeah, oh, yeah.
So a couple of these bullets under the specificallys are not sort of related to the effort to make this sort of gender even. So the second one is shoes. The fourth one is just, clothing being suitable for the particular classes. Somewhat similarly for the fifth one. And then the sixth one is head coverings. And so, and so you could decide you like those. It's just categories of clothing that are designed to be sort of suitable for certain situations. And then separately, if you're looking at these in categories, look at, do you want a dress to add provisions to the dress code that go to a certain amount of suitability or appropriateness of clothing? And that's really the first and the third bullet, right? The third and the bullet are more about length and so on and so forth. And so that's the one thing that I think there's sort of 2 categories within these specifics.
Can I just add a sort of comment about this section, just to sort of explain the thought behind adding something like this, which is something that Wake has done. It's something that a few other districts across the country have done as well, which is a lot of times the dress code is like, you can't wear any of these things. What this tries to do is say, this is the type of dress you should be wearing, to make actually like applying enforcement sort of more consistent and clear, and make it a little bit more sort of positive. You know how you have like positive classroom rules instead of like just a list of things you can't do. So that's sort of the intent of this type of paragraph.
Well, and you mentioned enforcement. Then that comes next.
Yeah, that's the next part.
Just want to make sure nobody has any questions
Okay,
about bullets. If I could say, there was a bullet, or there is a bullet in Wake's that I felt like, my personal opinion is that it comes in conflict with their bullet A. So if you look at Wake's, it's the same as the first bullet that I put on ours. Students must wear clothing that covers their skin from chest to mid-thigh. Then Wake's C bullet on there says clothing must cover undergarments, waistbands, and straps excluded. I don't know how you can cover your skin from your chest to your mid-thigh and allow your waistband to be exposed. Like those two, we don't have to use one wording or the other, but in my opinion, those two come in conflict with each other.
I'm perfectly fine with that one not being in there, see. Well, it's not in here. He's referring to the one he sent out where it talks about waistbands being seen.
Yeah, it's just that it comes in conflict with
I
it.
would like to actually personally, I would be more interested in seeing the reverse, because I think if we have this much of a female stomach showing or a young man with his waistband showing, I don't want them pulled out of class for that. Like, to me, that's a waste of time. And I would rather have it explicitly say we're not policing bra straps and waistbands than being concerned about.
I don't agree with that.
I don't agree with that.
All right, do we finish that? To say we're not policing
bra straps
and waistbands. Well, yeah, I don't see how we can, because you know what, I see them every day.
That's what I'm saying. So we can pretend that a young man's not wearing a shirt and his waistband's not showing, but like the reality is that is something that's happening in our schools.
In 2019, that's how you dress. Now, in 1970, in my high school, in 1969, you couldn't.
And if we say,
but you can see your bra now.
I'm sorry, I'm feeling like
this
is a policy meeting.
Yeah,
like that's what it feels like.
Go
I'm sorry. Students must wear clothing that covers skin from chest to mid-thigh. Then like, well, that tank top's too low and your chest is showing. And this is the exact point that the policy committee wanted to have this in here, is to stop shenanigans like that. And so I feel like by putting this, gives more ambiguity rather than enforcing what we were trying to do in the first place.
The previous WIC version had something like students must wear basically like a shirt and pants or a skirt or a dress equivalent. It didn't say the chest to mid-thigh business. It just said you needed to wear a top and a bottom, and it needed to be on the front and the back and the sides. And you could show your waistband or your bra strap, but that was it in terms of underwear. And I felt like that was very clear, whereas this sort of mid-thigh thing, now are we like, how high up the thigh is that?
Yeah.
Like
Right.
that's what I wanted to avoid.
Did we have that discussion?
I'm actually kind of feeling shocked about what's in front of us, and I'm kind of wanting to just send it back to policy, because I'm feeling like, I
Yes,
appreciate the work you did on this draft, but I'm not really feeling like it captures the, spirit of what we were trying to do, and I don't, like, to vote on this feels just, I'm not feeling good about it.
Steve?
Just a quick comment. I think there's been an expectation for a long time that schools are preparing young people for the world of work, or they're going off to higher education. And you work for a big company, worldwide company out there in RTP, and a kid comes in for a job interview. And if we don't train the kids what the expectations are, I'm sure you do the same thing in your co-op programs. This is the expected dress you have to wear to go in for a job interview, then we're failing that kid. I'm just saying that. I was in a supermarket the other day in Washington, and there was a couple of young men. I guess no one wears white BVD underwear anymore. I'm just making this general observation for men, okay? Which was the standard outfit for many, many years.
That's right.
But I'm really not interested in seeing somebody's underwear, okay? Whether it's in a Whole Foods or whether it's in a school. I don't think we're preparing them properly for the real world. And you don't want to be nitpicking people all the time too. You got a strap showing. There's got to be a reasonable interpretation of this stuff, where kids are allowed to be themselves, but also understand the real world is going to expect something different. If you go in the Marine Corps or the Army or the Navy or the Air Force, they're going to change that perception rather quickly. Okay, you can still be yourself, but when you're in school, you're expected to be this particular format. And I second your opinion. I think it needs to go back to policy and have further discussion.
I think it needs to go back to policy
All right,
also.
so that's 3. And what are you gonna say?
So the only thing I wanted to say is, so we definitely have a difference of opinion on the waistband, and if it goes back to policy, I think we should at least get a weighted vote, so the policy committee knows how the whole board feels. Because I've heard mixed, but there's at least a few other people that haven't said how they feel, and I'd like to know, so it doesn't come back, we have that same discussion if the board.
Because you were at the policy committee when we talked about it.
Committee, and 2 issues that I had, and I still have an issue with that.
Right.
Where you're talking about it has to be solid going down.
Right.
There's a lot of attractive outfits where they're open part of the way down. I don't have a problem with that. And this is an age different, I've got teenage boys now, but they even did it in elementary school. They're not only showing their waistbands, they are part of their attire, whether I like it or not. They show part of their underwear. I mean, you can actually buy pants that have the underwear sewn into it where you can see it.
You're right.
Okay, so I mean.
All right, so it sounds like this is going back to policy. I'm hearing, we don't want to rush right into this. Sorry, Todd. All right,
No,
so.
it's totally okay.
All right.
I'm less concerned about the vote tonight. I thought we could do some work.
Right, so we're gonna work on this in policy.
But it's fine.
Okay, so yes.
Could we understand a little bit more about this waistband business and what the concern there is? Because to me, a waistband is a very clearly defined, like, top part of a pair of underpants.
Yeah, my concern is, as soon as we say you can show your waistband, kids are going to do more. And if the principals don't have the leverage to say.
But it says you can't.
What?
It says you can't. It says waistband. That is a
Except.
very.
It says except.
Except, I'm saying you can only show a waistband.
So once you start showing the waistband, they're gonna start showing the entire underwear.
Exactly. Now the principal says, oh, here, let me pull my pants up, or let me do this, and I just think we send the message that, hey, you know, we're not asking you to show your underwear or whatever, and that principals can you know, under enforcement can tell them, hey, just make sure you wear a belt or whatever.
But
This,
my-
okay, gentlemen,
okay.
one,
Have principals had a chance to weigh in on this at all?
Not
They're the
yet.
ones that are gonna be enforced.
Not yet.
Yeah.
not yet.
But I'm still gonna go back, you can buy pants nowadays to where part of the underwear is sewn in so the pants, they don't drop it down too low. That's the way it is now, and it's a little going out of fashion right now. But with this policy, they could actually say, hey, you can't wear those pants. And that's, and I don't like it, but that's one of the fashion statements that young children are making nowadays. I don't like tattoos, but they're.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, okay,
So-
so, all right, so this is gonna go back to policy, and I hear you, saying that you believe board members should be able to weigh in on this before we,
Well, I just wanted to get a feeling, cause
Right.
I mean, I heard me and Tony, I don't know your view on it.
I just said the same thing.
Okay,
Yeah.
so, and
Well, I'm comfortable with waistbands.
yeah,
If
so.
we're voting on waistbands right now.
Oh,
No, I was
no, we're
not
voting.
not
No.
voting.
Okay.
I
Oh,
just
no
didn't
voting.
want them to go back and
No
then us
voting.
have that same discussion.
I think it might be inevitable, so.
Right, yeah.
We
So-
might just have to have it again.
So, at the policy meeting, we ended up on the same page, and there were 4 of us there. Were you at the policy? No, there were 4 of us, that's right, you were sick. All right, so this item, dress code, policy discussion, we'll go back to the policy meeting for a more in-depth discussion. Yes, sir.
One other thing, this really aroused me, just the way Ms. Strong said she was alarmed, I think. We need to be careful when we put this stuff out on an agenda, because I didn't understand, we had the WAKE policy, well, I didn't know it was WAKE, it's an unidentified school system. And it was not clear to me. I thought we were getting rid of the policy that we were all so proud of. It's been adopted by Chapel
I
Hill.
think we're gonna be really careful in the future how we come out of policy
Yeah,
into
well, no,
these meetings.
I'm not faulting anybody, I'm merely making an observation.
Right.
But, you know, you
I
as the
agree
chair of the
completely.
policy committee,
I
don't
agree
put the
completely.
agenda together. The superintendent and the staff need to be very, very diligent about that, because this can arouse community.
Well, it aroused, but this is the one I would have been expected to be in our agenda.
That one there?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
That's what I'll be honest, that's what I thought was in there, and I'm looking at it and it was just good.
Yeah.
It turns out I was wrong, but I just thought it was totally gonna gut what we'd spent several months on working on. Whereas this one doesn't, there's still some minor
Yeah.
issues in it.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, okay, so now, thank you very much for that very, lively discussion. That was good for us. So now, our board attorney, do you have a report or an update?
Yeah, I do wanna just, talk about Senate Bill 599, it's just real quickly, the General Assembly in their last session, they basically said that school districts, it used to be that school districts would pay the first half for an employee, first half of the year when an employee went out on short-term disability. So if an employee can't do their job, then they could go on short-term disability for a year and you get 50% of your pay.
Yeah.
The school district would pay for the first 6 months and the state would pay the second 6 months. And there was also an opportunity if you went to the state and that the state had a health review board that could extend it for a year. So then ultimately you could be on disability for 2 years. You could get on long-term, but that's a different situation. What the state did in the last session was they said that the school districts now would have to pay the whole year. They wouldn't pay, the state wouldn't pay the second half. What this bill would do is that it would basically say that school districts can't go right to the state to ask for a determination about whether, through the medical review board, or whether an employee is disabled. And a lot of school districts, because they don't have the medical expertise, would like the state to be able to make that determination. And so this bill would sort of take that away and say that during the short-term disability period, you don't have an opportunity to go to the medical review board. You also don't have the opportunity to be able to get something called a preliminary determination of long-term, which would be that you could just go one time and they would say, you're clear for a year. The state would approve it for the year. And then the other thing that it would appear is that it's taken away this extended short-term disability, so that second year of short-term disability benefits. And so just, you know, it was one that didn't get a lot of attention, and I was asked to take a look at it for a different client. I just wanted to mention to you to keep your eyes on it, and we'll see if there's some efforts to maybe stop it. But, you know, you've seen a lot of things that kind of come quietly and chip away at some of the benefits that the state was providing previously, and removing extended short-term disability and removing school districts' opportunity to be able to go to a medical review board to get determinations about whether somebody's disabled are two things that heretofore have been available to school systems, and hopefully they'll stay, but if this bill is passed, they may not. So that's my little report.
Wow, thank you for that. Is there anything else that claimed your attention, because we removed the last item off the agenda, from the agenda? I will entertain a motion.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you.